I was 17 years old, still living under my parents' roof. I was old enough that they trusted me to stay home alone without worrying. And this happened during one of those stretches when they were out of town for a short while. Our house wasn't remarkable in any way, just another quiet place tucked into a bland suburban block. On days like that, my routine was always the same. I stayed inside, bounced between TV shows, and lost hours playing video games. I didn't have a car back then, so unless I felt like making a long walk just to grab something greasy to eat, there was no real reason to go anywhere. I spent most of the morning stretched out in bed, half watching whatever was on, before eventually dragging myself up and heading downstairs to the kitchen. Almost the moment I started throwing breakfast together, my phone buzzed with a message from a friend. I assumed he was just waiting for me to log on, so I ignored it until I finished eating. When I finally checked the text, though, it stopped me cold. "Who's the guy outside your house?" I just stared at the screen. Completely confused, I typed back, "What?" and walked over to the front window. There was nothing out there. No cars parked along the curb. No people on the sidewalk. Just the same still, empty neighborhood. His house sat directly across from mine, but I didn't see him at his window either. That only made it stranger. After a moment, I called him, figuring it had to be some dumb joke. He liked messing with me from time to time, but even then, I couldn't see what the punchline was supposed to be. When he answered, though, his tone wiped away any thought of it being a prank. He told me he was serious. He said he'd seen a man standing outside my place, someone he didn't recognize at all. The only reason he'd even mentioned it was because the guy looked like he was trying to peer through the windows. That sent a shiver through me. Still, with no sign of anyone outside anymore, and no clue who it could have been, we eventually shrugged it off. We jumped into a voice call and spent the next several hours playing games like usual. I only went downstairs once during that time to grab more water, and even then, I glanced out the window again. Nothing. No one. By the time we ended the call, it was already well into the evening. The sky outside had gone completely dark, and I hadn't even noticed how much time had slipped away. I stood up and headed downstairs. I started putting together something quick to eat, already thinking I'd probably spend the rest of the night watching TV in my room. That's when I noticed it, a shadow shifting across the wall in front of me. It was brief, like a flicker. I spun around immediately. There was nothing behind me. The living room was still. Nothing that should have cast a moving shadow at all. Then my eyes landed on the window. I stepped closer and looked out. The yard was dark and quiet. I didn't see a single person. Even so, the thought of someone standing out there, just beyond the glass, sent a chill crawling up my spine. I told myself I was just jumpy. A passing car, headlights, anything could have caused it. I forced myself to brush it off. I finished cooking, took my food upstairs, and ate in bed while the TV droned on in the background. I stayed there for quite a while, barely paying attention, just letting the noise fill the room. Eventually, as it grew later, I realized something that made my stomach tighten. I hadn't turned on any of the lights upstairs. The only illumination came from the TV screen, flickering across the walls. My eyes kept drifting toward the thin gap beneath my bedroom door. The hallway outside was completely dark. Normally, a dark hallway or quiet house wouldn't bother me, but that night something felt off. I paused the show and told myself I'd go grab a snack downstairs. Part of me knew it was just an excuse to move through the house and flip on every light, to chase away the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. The moment I cracked open my bedroom door, it hit me harder. The house felt unnaturally silent, the hallway stretching before me like a black void. I flicked on the light, forcing myself to see it was just an empty corridor, and felt a little ridiculous, maybe even annoyed at myself for being creeped out. I started down the stairs, trying to shake it off. Before getting anything to eat, I peered out the windows. The paranoia crawling under my skin was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. I even left all the lights on downstairs, knowing I wouldn't be coming back down until bed, just to avoid thinking about the shadows swallowing the rooms. As I climbed back up the stairs, I froze. For a brief moment, I thought I heard footsteps echoing behind me, footsteps that matched my own, but there was something off about the sound. The house had never carried echoes like that before. I stepped down a few stairs and back up. The sound didn't repeat. I stood there, heart pounding, replaying the noise over and over in my mind. My pulse spiked. My eyes widened. And then I ran, up the stairs, into my room, slamming the door and locking it tight. I called the police immediately. I was almost certain that what I'd heard wasn't my own footsteps. It was someone else, mimicking me, trying to stay just behind me so I wouldn't notice. As I thought about it on the stairs, it clicked. That was exactly what it had sounded like. While waiting for the police, I called my friend to see if he had noticed anything. He said no, but went to the front window during the call, scanning the yard. A couple of minutes later, he froze. "Oh, shit," he muttered. He'd seen someone leaving from the side of my house, darting toward the tree line. He said it looked like the same man from earlier. I couldn't even speak. My skin felt like it was crawling. Every uneasy feeling I'd brushed off earlier suddenly made sense. I hadn't been imagining it. I hadn't been alone. When the officers arrived, I went outside with them, explaining everything while they inspected the house. My friend came out too, describing what he'd seen. The investigation didn't uncover much, other than promises to patrol the area and follow up if there were any leads. The officers mentioned a similar report from a nearby neighborhood a couple of weeks prior. Another kid, home alone, had been watched by the same man, who eventually approached the window and tried to coax the kid outside. In both cases, it wasn't clear what his intentions were. Kidnapping seemed like the obvious fear, but he didn't appear to have a car, and dragging someone out of a house seemed unlikely. I never found out what might have happened that night. That man is still out there somewhere, lurking around, invisible to anyone who isn't watching closely. Someone, somewhere, feeling that same creeping terror I had that night.
Subscribe and I'll tell you another story the next time you're alone in the dark.